my call 1,247 times. I know because I counted. I kept a little notepad right next to the phone. One small tally mark for every time that line went dead. People always asked me why I kept calling. Folks said, "Eleanor, have some dignity. Stop chasing that boy." But I want you to understand something before I tell you the rest of this story. Every single one of those calls, I wasn't calling to beg. I wasn't calling to argue. I was calling because I knew something was wrong. And a mother always knows. My name is Eleanor May Carter. I'm 73 years old, and I've lived in the same house on South Emerald Avenue in Bridgeport, Chicago, for going on 41 years. My late husband, Gerald, God rest his soul, and I raised our boy Daniel right there in that house. Third bedroom on the left, blue walls, a model airplane hanging from the ceiling that Gerald helped him build when Daniel was 8 years old. I still haven't taken it down. Some things you just can't bring yourself to move. My days are quiet now. I wake up at 6:15. I never could sleep past sunrise, even after Gerald passed. I make a pot of coffee. I read the Tribune, and some mornings I bake. Not because I need to eat a whole coffee cake by myself, Lord knows. But bacon was always how this house smelled when Daniel was growing up. Cinnamon rolls on Sunday mornings, snickerdoodles before Christmas. I suppose I keep baking because the smell reminds me the house is still a home, even when it feels more like a waiting room. When Daniel left for the North Side, got himself a job at some financial firm downtown, I was proud. Lord, I was so proud of that boy. Gerald had only been gone 2 years, and Daniel said, "Mama, I'm going to make Dad proud." And I believed him. The first few months he called every Sunday. We'd talk for an hour about his new apartment, his colleagues, the restaurants he was trying. And then the calls started getting shorter. Once a week became once a month. Once a month became holidays only. And then even the holidays got complicated. Now, I want to tell you about Marcus Webb, because you need to know about Marcus to understand what happened to my son. Daniel met Marcus at that financial firm. Said Marcus was the one who mentored him, helped him get his footing. "He's like a big brother to me, Mama," Daniel told me once. I only met Marcus twice. Both times, he shook my hand with both of his, real charming. And both times, the moment he turned away, I had a chill go right through me. Some people are sunshine. Marcus Webb was the kind of warm that burns you slow. I started keeping that little notepad in 2018. Daniel had been in the city for about 3 years by then. At first, I told myself he was just busy. Young man building his career, I understood that. But something felt different. There was a distance that wasn't just geography. When he did pick up, which was rare, his voice was clipped, tense, like he was waiting for the call to be over before it even started. And once or twice, I heard another voice in the background. Marcus. I recognized his laugh. I don't know why that made my stomach drop, but it did. My neighbor Dot, Dorothy Washington, down the street on South Emerald, she used to sit with me on Tuesday afternoons. She'd say, "Eleanor, have you called that boy?" And I'd show her the notepad. And Dot, she never sugar-coated anything in her 68 years on this earth. She'd look at those tally marks and she'd say, real quiet, "Eleanor, something ain't right." And I'd nod, because I knew. I just didn't know what. September 14th, 2022. I wrote it down in the notepad. I called Daniel that morning, same as I'd been doing, knowing he likely wouldn't answer, but calling anyway. And something was different. The phone didn't ring through to his voicemail greeting, just a generic tone, like the number had been reset. I tried 3 more times that week. Nothing. And then I stopped calling. Not because I gave up on my son, but because a chill had settled into my chest that I needed to sit with quietly. Something told me this silence was different from all the other silences. That fall and winter were the longest of my life. Not because anything dramatic happened. It was the quiet that was unbearable. No fights, no slammed doors, just nothing. I celebrated Thanksgiving with Dot and her family. They set a place for me like they always do, and Dot's granddaughter drew me a little turkey out of her handprint, and I put it on my refrigerator next to Daniel's school photo. I cooked Christmas dinner alone that year, set one plate, ate half of it, and I thought about Gerald, and I thought about all the Sundays that were supposed to come. I want to tell you something I've never told anyone except Dot. After Gerald died, I started writing letters to Daniel. Not emails, real letters, on stationery. Some nights, when the house got too quiet and calling felt like too much, I'd sit at that desk and just write. I told him things I couldn't say out loud. I told him about his father, about the neighborhood, about small things I noticed, about him, things only a mother would know. I wrote about the night I drove past his building just to see if his light was on. I never mailed a single one. They went in the drawer, dozens of them. Every letter I never sent was a call I never stopped making. It was the second Tuesday in February when the young woman knocked on my door. Priya, she said her name was. She worked at a law office downtown. She said she had some papers she needed me to sign. Something to do with Gerald's old pension account, a correction they were making. But before she turned to leave, she paused on my porch steps and said very quietly, almost like she wasn't sure she should, "Mrs. Carter, does your son know you're still living here?" I looked at her for a long moment. I said, "Why do you ask?" And she said, "Because someone told our office you'd moved to a care facility 2 years ago." I felt the ground shift under my feet. Priya told me, real careful-like, that their office had been in contact with Marcus Webb for the past 1.5 years regarding a financial matter involving Gerald's pension, a beneficiary change request that had been submitted. She said Daniel had signed paperwork authorizing Marcus to act as a liaison. What stopped me cold was what she said next. She said the paperwork listed Daniel's next of kin as none living. I had to ask her to repeat that. None living. My son had told someone, I don't know who, I don't know when, that I was gone. I didn't cry. Not right then. Some hurts go too deep for tears. They just settle in like cold weather settling into old bones. But I made a decision standing in that kitchen. I was going to find out what had been done to my son. Not what Daniel had done. What had been done to him. Because the boy I raised would not have called his mother dead while she was still standing in the kitchen where she taught him to make biscuits. That was not my Daniel. Something, or someone, had gotten between us. And I needed to know who. Dot didn't say, "I told you so." She just set down her mug and said, "Eleanor May Carter, you're going to that boy." I said I didn't know where he was. His phone was dead. I didn't know his new address. Dot looked at me and said, "Yes, you do." And she was right. I knew where he worked. I'd memorized the name of that building years ago. A mother doesn't forget those things. I still had Daniel's business card in the kitchen junk drawer, the first one he ever gave me when he got promoted. I'd never thrown it out. I hadn't ridden the L train in years. Gerald always drove me everywhere, and after he passed, Dot would take me if I needed to go far. But that morning I bundled up in my good Navy coat, the one I wear to church, and I took the red line all the way downtown to the Loop. I sat in that train car and I thought about Daniel as a little boy riding the L with his father on Saturdays, pressing his face against the glass. He used to count the buildings. "How many floors, Daddy?" He was always counting things. I thought about that the whole ride in. I walked up to that security desk and I told the young man my name, and I said I was there to see my son, Daniel Carter, who worked on the 22nd floor. He looked me up in the system, and I watched his face. He typed, stopped, typed again, and then he looked up at me with an expression I will never forget, not unkind, but uncertain. He said, "Ma'am, Daniel Carter hasn't worked in this building in 8 months. I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "He left last June, I'm sorry." I was almost to the revolving door when I heard someone say my name. I turned around and there was a young woman, Sarah, she said her name was, Sarah Okonkwo. She said she used to work with Daniel on the 22nd floor. She said she'd seen my picture on his desk. She looked at me for a moment, and then she said very quietly, "Mrs. Carter, did Daniel ever tell you what happened last summer?" I said he hadn't told me much of anything in years, and Sarah closed her eyes for just a second, like she was deciding something. Then she said, "Can I buy you a cup of coffee?" Sarah told me that last spring something had shifted at the firm. Daniel had been doing well, a promotion, a good performance review, but then something happened with Marcus, a financial discrepancy, money that had moved in ways it wasn't supposed to. She said Daniel had raised a concern internally. She said within a month, Daniel was gone. Officially, he resigned. But Sarah lowered her voice when she said it, the way people lower their voice when they know the official story isn't the whole story. She said Daniel had looked hollowed out those last few weeks, like someone had convinced him there was nowhere left to turn. When I got home that evening, I nearly missed it. The envelope was plain. No return address, just a Milwaukee postmark from 3 weeks prior. My name on the front in careful print. I opened it right there on the porch, cold as it was. Inside was a single piece of paper with 2 lines written on it. "Your son is at St. Mary's on North Lake Drive, room 314. He doesn't know I'm writing this. He doesn't know a lot of things yet. Please come." It wasn't signed. To this day, I don't know for certain who sent it, but I have a feeling, and I think you will too. Dot didn't even ask questions when I knocked on her door at 6 in the morning. I showed her the letter. She read it once, put on her good shoes, picked up her car keys. That's Dot Washington. We drove 90 miles in the dark, and I watched the sun come up over Lake Michigan from the passenger window, and I thought about all the sunrises I'd watched alone on that porch, calling and calling and calling. And I thought, whatever I find in that hospital room, whatever state my boy is in, I'm going to walk through that door without anger, just love. because that's all I ever had for him. Room 314. The door was open just a crack, and when I pushed it open and stepped inside, there was my son, my Daniel, 41 years old, sitting up in a hospital bed with his arm bandaged and his face thinner than I'd ever seen it, and dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept right in months. He looked up when I walked in, and the sound he made, not a word, just a sound, like something breaking loose inside him. I will hear that sound for the rest of my life. He said, "Mama," like he wasn't sure I was real. We talked for 4 hours. He told me everything, how Marcus had slowly, over years, convinced him that I was toxic, that I was manipulative, that calling me back would only drag him into old family drama. Marcus had a name for it. He called it setting limits with difficult parents. Daniel said Marcus was always sending him articles, podcasts, books about it. And Daniel, my son, who always wanted to do the right thing, believed him, because Marcus was the authority in his life. Marcus had replaced everything, his mentor, his friend, eventually his conscience. Here is what Daniel pieced together, with help from Priya at the law office, and from Sarah, and eventually from a detective who got involved. Marcus had been using Daniel for years, using his access, his credentials, his goodwill with clients to move money. And when Daniel started asking questions, Marcus needed him isolated, away from anyone who knew him well, away from his mother, because I was the one person Marcus couldn't control. And apparently, he knew it, because Priya told us later that Marcus had asked the law firm to list me as deceased. He didn't want me finding anything. He didn't want me making a single call that might reach my son. I had brought a handful of the letters from my desk drawer. I don't know why I packed them that morning. Instinct, maybe. The kind of thing a mother just does without knowing why. I put them on that little hospital table, and I watched Daniel pick up the first one. He read it quietly, and I watched his face change the way weather changes, slowly at first, then all at once. He got to the part where I described his promotion, which he had never told me about, and he stopped. He looked up. He said, "Mama, how did you know about this?" And I said, "Baby, I always knew. I just wasn't allowed to say so." Daniel pulled out the last envelope from the stack and frowned. He said, "Mama, whose handwriting is this?" And I looked at it, and my heart stopped, because that wasn't one of mine. I'd never seen that letter before. Someone had slipped it into my bundle at some point, on my porch maybe, or through the mail slot. Daniel opened it. Inside was a single paragraph. It was from Priya. It said, "Mrs. Carter, I placed a letter in your mailbox 6 weeks ago. I've been trying to find a way to reach you both safely. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry for a lot of things. Please know that I tried. And please know he's been asking about you. He asks every day. I am not a vindictive woman. I want to be clear about that. I did not find joy in what happened to Marcus Webb, but I will tell you this. The truth has a way of surfacing. It always does. Marcus had spent years building walls between my son and everyone who loved him. And all it took to bring those walls down was one young woman from a law office, Priya Nair, who had a conscience she couldn't quiet. She was the one who sent the letter to my mailbox. She was the one who called the tip line. She was the one who, despite being terrified of losing her job, decided that what Marcus had done was wrong, Some angels don't have wings, folks. Some of them wear visitor badges and carry manila folders. Daniel came home in April. The doctor said he needed time, and he took it. 2 months in Milwaukee getting his health back, then 1 more month at a place downstate. But April the 7th, he pulled up to South Emerald Avenue in a rented car, and he stood at the end of my front walk, and he looked at that house like he was seeing it for the first time and the last time all at once. I stood on the porch. I didn't go to him. I let him come to me. And when he did, he held on for a long time. He said, "Mama, I'm so sorry." I said, "I know, baby, I know." And I meant it. Dot Washington met Daniel for the first time that April evening. She came over at 5 o'clock like she always does on Tuesdays, and there he was sitting on my porch. Dot looked at him for a long minute. Daniel said, "You must be Miss Dot. My mama talks about you." Dot said, "I know who I am. Question is, do you know who your mama is?" And Daniel looked at me, and then back at Dot, and he said, "Yes, ma'am, I do now." And Dot sat down, picked up her mug, and said, "Good, because she's been saving your seat." And I swear when she said that, I had to look away so neither of them would see me cry. I take that notepad out sometimes, and I look at those 1,247 tally marks. People ask me if I'm angry, if I resent all those years, and I'll tell you what I tell them. Those marks aren't a record of rejection. They're a record of love. Every single one of them is proof that I never stopped. That's what love is at the end of the day. Not the big gestures, not the holidays and the bouquets. It's the daily choosing, the daily showing up, even when no one answers, even when the line goes dead, even when the silence feels like it might swallow you whole. You keep calling, because somewhere on the other end of that line is someone who needs to know they haven't been forgotten. And as long as I have breath in me, I will never stop calling. If my story touched your heart today, I hope you'll press that like button and share this video with someone who still believes that a mother's love never runs out. And if you know someone who's been pulled away from family, maybe forward this to them. You never know whose heart needs to hear it today. Subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories like mine. There are so many of us out here with something worth saying. And if you'd like to hear another story about family, regret, and second chances, click the video on your screen right now. I promise it's one you won't want to stop watching.